Under a velvet sky studded with stars, a sea of fanatics chants a single name in unison, Ash Heath, as they prostrate before the young man atop the obsidian throne. They fail to notice the truth. Behind that cold, imperious gaze, he is absolutely losing his mind. Just hours ago, he was a corporate zombie pulling an all-nighter at a gaming studio. Now, trying to maintain his icy composure, he panics. The language isn't one he knows, yet the meaning flows directly into his brain. After frantically analyzing his surroundings, the terrifying conclusion hits him. He has transmigrated. He tests the limits of this new vessel. It moves with fluid precision, a perfect fit for his soul. Strangely, he shares the same first name, Ash. Is this a cosmic joke or the reason for his summoning, but a deadly problem looms over him? He has zero memories of the original Ash. Based on the kneeling masses, he is a holy figure, a god among men. One slip-up could mean death. Sweat forms invisibly as he realizes he has no script for this play. He stares at the followers of Ash Heath, who wait with bated breath for a divine decree. Panic rises. Even if he claims to be a victim, these zealots won't listen. They would likely tear him apart for heresy. He is trapped. Just then, the cultists resume their rhythmic incantation, summoning the power of the great Ash Heath. Suddenly, the air shimmers with multicolored aura as the cult invokes the sacred name to save their world. Ash instinctively drops to one knee. In the heavens answer, he receives blessings from the divine pantheon. The Lord of a billion lights, ruler of battle, grants him godlike strength and courage. The sovereign of storms and destiny bestows upon him the angel of wisdom. It doesn't stop there. The ruler of equality gives him the angel of everlasting health. Finally, the ruler of fantasy and joy grants him unequaled charm. Unimaginable power surges through his veins like liquid fire. He realizes this isn't a curse, it's a jackpot. He has been transmigrated as a protagonist. This is the ultimate power fantasy, chosen by 4 gods, worshipped by thousands. The script is clear. He will slay the monsters, save the realm, and marry the beautiful princess. But reality crashes the party. His minions scream a warning. The mad hunters have breached the lair. Their survival hangs by a thread. Ash smirks. Mad hunters. They sound like the villains of this story. He draws his blade, the steel singing, and commands his followers to clear the path. But then, a squad of stunning knights storms the sanctum, challenging Ash to a duel. Adrenaline spikes. He can feel the divine energy humming under his skin. Empowered by the gods, he cycles through potential attacks. He needs a cool name for his technique, but decides to keep it mysterious. He swings his blade casually. Boom! A space-slicing sword aura rips through the air. He is a genius, but the hunters counterattack with devastating force. The shockwave blasts his followers, leaving them critically wounded. Ash is stunned as he is launched across the room like a rag doll. The harsh truth settles in. He is nothing compared to these enemies. Even with the blessings of 4 gods, gasping for air, Ash realizes his fatal mistake. He acted recklessly, forgetting he is just a regular guy from Earth, not a battle-hardened warrior. He knows nothing of this world's power system. For a brief moment, the corporate slave forgot his place and played God. Now, he pays the price. The lead hunter steps forward, identifying himself as Gerald of the Crime Hunting Bureau. He reads the charges: kidnapping, murder, robbery, and leading the infamous 4 Pillars cult. Gerald sneers at the fallen god. If you have complaints, take a ticket at the Kimon branch front desk. The hunter looks down with eyes full of mockery. He lectures Ash on his stupidity, telling him that a novice shouldn't have challenged a tri-wing hunter when he can't even handle 4 chaos spirits. Cold steel locks around Ash's wrists. Gerald declares him under arrest as the cult leader. The city sleeps safer tonight because the great Ash is finally behind bars. Cut to the interrogation room at the bureau. Ash sits in the hot seat. He answers, name and gender. But when the questions get heavy, he plays his only card: I have amnesia. I don't remember anything. Hunter Amy slams the table. She knows he is playing them for fools. A junior hunter steps up, bragging about his level 1 interrogation license, ready to torture a confession out of him. But Gerald intervenes. Stand down and burn that useless license. He reminds the team that they are walking on thin ice. The Human Rights Act applies, and the Parliament is watching every move. They cannot use excessive force. Desperate, Amy demands a memory mage to extract the truth directly from his mind. Gerald sighs, dropping the final bombshell. The memory mage isn't coming. Gerald laid out the grim reality for the team. Ash had stared directly into the abyss of the four pillars. This meant extracting his memories was impossible. No investigator had ever touched a cultist's mind and returned sane. The four pillars specialized in absolute corruption. Gerald recalled the tragedy from 134 years ago. A powerful mage tried to extract a cultist's memories, only to be consumed by madness. He became a devoted believer, causing the cult to rise from the ashes. Amy slammed her fist on the table, eyes blazing with fury. Without testimony or memories, the case was dead in the water, but Gerald remained cold as ice. He assured her that a slow, agonizing death was far more suitable for a monster like Ash. The interrogation was merely theater. The real execution would be the public trial. The entire city would play jury. It would begin on the 15th at 8 post-meridian. Disgusted by the charade, Amy stormed out, refusing to watch another second. Meanwhile, inside the interrogation room, the clock ticked. Ash was granted 15-minute breaks, a mercy of the Human Rights Act. Gerald observed him from the shadows. The man's panic, his confusion, it felt too real to be an act. Gerald's instincts screamed that this man truly had no memories. Fear trembled in the prisoner's eyes. By law, if a suspect suffered from genuine memory loss, they could be exempt from criminal punishment. If they could prove his mind was wiped, Ash could walk free as an innocent man. But that path was blocked. Without a memory mage, his fate lay in the hands of a bloodthirsty public. Ash slumped in his chair, lamenting his cursed luck. Why couldn't he be reincarnated as a hero? Instead, he woke up as a villainous cult leader, instantly surrounded by a pack of high-level hunters. He had transmigrated at the exact moment the cult was being raided. It was the worst spawn point imaginable. The evidence they showed him earlier made his stomach churn. The photos confirmed it. The previous owner of this body was a monster. Now, the only question remained, how would they kill him? He clung to a sliver of hope that the death penalty was abolished here. He was grateful for the humane treatment so far, but suddenly, a scorching heat burned the back of his neck. A holographic system message materialized. It read, "Invited as a special guest on Blood Moon Judgment." Confused, he tried to type a reply physically, but the system barked an error. Messaging was disabled due to his arrest status. Realization struck he could control this interface with his mind. It resembled a modern smartphone from his old life. Yet, despair washed over him as he saw every useful feature was locked. There were no apps he could use. Just as he prepared to close the window, he spotted it. A single usable app, Aurora's Sorcerer Manual. His eyes went wide. This was the mobile game his own company had developed back on Earth. Memories flooded back. He had led the planning team, pouring his soul into its operations. He remembered grinding through the night. The next thing he knew, he had woken up in this nightmare. But this app, this could be the key. He dragged the icon to his home screen. This had to be his transmigration cheat skill. Heart racing, he launched the app, only to be bombarded by error warnings. No network connection. He nearly gave up, until a notification chimed search system normal. Only the gotcha and top-up functions were active. He frantically pressed the buttons, directed instantly to a payment screen. But he was a prisoner with zero funds. He tried again, but the paywall stood firm. He cursed his past self, of course. His company made it pay to win. Just as hope faded, the daily check-in system flickered to life. Success. He claimed the login bonus. It was a source crystal. This item granted a 10 times operator search with a guaranteed unit. This was his only lifeline. Desperate to avoid the executioner's blade, he squeezed his eyes shut and prayed to the gods of RNG. He needed a powerhouse. He opened his eyes to reveal Berserker Sword Maiden. Ash groaned in frustration. She was a late-game carry who was completely useless at level 1, but the summon wasn't over. Another operator appeared. Flash. Ash stared in shock. The character was him. The game had synchronized with his new reality. Even better, he realized he could share experience points between operators. If he trained the maiden, he would get stronger too. This was his ticket out of prison. He raided his inventory and found the perfect training materials. But there was a catch, the mood mechanic. The happier the operator, the greater the training gains. Despite the looming execution, he had to become the perfect caretaker. He had to manage her happiness to survive. He focused on boosting the girl's mood, preparing to grind for his life. Ash finalizes the registration, inscribing the Berserker Sword Maiden into the Ancient Sorcerer Manual. With a confirming tap, the simulation initializes. The virtual training for the Sword Maiden begins within the system. Ash attempts to monitor the progress, but the crushing weight of the day's battles drags him under. Darkness claims him. Meanwhile, 3 time zones away, a young girl who retired early for her beauty sleep is about to have a rude awakening. Sonya suddenly finds herself standing in a surreal dreamscape. Before her looms a man, motionless, with a massive greatsword impaled through his chest. Confused, Sonya kneels by a lake to sip the water. It tastes impossibly sweet, the telltale sign of a lucid dream. She eyes the corpse, curiosity warring with fear. Drawn by an unseen force, she grips the hilt of the impaled blade. It feels perfect in her hands, as if forged for her soul. But then, the impossible happens. The corpse twitches. Slowly, the man pulls himself from the depths of death, rising to his full height. Sonya freezes in terror. The man introduces himself as the final observer, his voice soothing. He promises he is no enemy, urging her to calm her racing heart. But silence hangs in the air. Slowly, a sadistic grin stretches across his face, shattering the illusion of safety. "I will kill you," he whispers. "The rules are simple: survive for 72 hours in this nightmare, or defeat him to wake up." Sonya barely has time to process the threat. The observer unsheathes his blade and strikes a flash of steel, and the first blow lands. 10 seconds, he mocks. Rest. Sonya stands stunned, checking her body. No blood, no wound. Yet the agony searing through her nerves is all too real. Seeing her bewilderment, the observer explains the cruelty of this realm. They share a consciousness. Damage is mental, but the pain is absolute. Time is up. He slashes her again without mercy, resetting the sadistic clock. Another 10 seconds of respite. Weaponless and desperate, Sonya eyes the lake. She dives into the water, hoping the liquid depths will offer sanctuary from this monster. She holds her breath, swimming hard against the current. Above the surface, the observer watches her retreat, shaking his head at her shameful display. Lungs burning, Sonya breaks the surface for a gasp of air. It is a fatal mistake. The observer hurls his sword with terrifying precision. The blade cuts through the water, slicing her even as she submerges. She clutches her jaw, checking if it is still attached. Above, the observer laughs, mocking her inability to learn despite dying by his hand countless times. His arrogance ignites a spark of frustration within her, but then she suppresses it. To his shock, she drops to her knees. Tears well in her eyes as she begs for mercy. She pleads with him to end this torture, promising total obedience if he just stops. The observer merely smirks. "Submission is boring," he sneers. "I will only be satisfied when you defeat me." Something in Sonya snaps. She marches toward him, rage replacing fear. "Why are you so obsessed with killing me?" she screams. "I haven't done anything to you." She tries to reason with the madman, pointing out there are far greater evils in the world to target. "I'm just a fragile girl," she insists. But the observer's eyes darken. He reveals a chilling truth: she has wronged him before. He attacks again, cutting the conversation short. Gasping for air during her brief rest, Sonya asks if surviving the full 72 hours is a viable escape. "Technically," he admits, "but here, 72 hours feels like an eternity." He leans in close. "Can you endure the taste of death over and over?" he asks. "And why trust the words of your killer?" He taunts her further, warning that even if she survives this night, the next night promises no safety. Gripping his sword, he shatters her hope. "Once you have tasted death," he growls, "you stop believing in miracles." He swings, a strike meant to end her again, but this time, something changes. Clang steel meets steel in a twist of fate. Sonya parries the attack with her own blade, but the victory is short-lived. The cycle of defeat continues. Preparing for the next round, she recalls the legends of great sword masters, warriors whose very presence commanded fear. She studies the observer. He is strong, yes, but he is no grandmaster, and that means he is not invincible. She notices the cut she landed on him magically sealing shut, a regenerative dream. Sonya smiles. The system gives no advantages, only a fair fight. "Fine," she whispers. She charges in, initiating the clash on her terms. As predicted, he opens with his standard strike. She blocks it effortlessly. Sparks fly as they trade blows in a flurry of violence. Sonya counts internally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She unleashes a heavy slash, the observer evades, and her wide swing leaves her chest exposed. A fatal opening. But Sonya smiles. It was a trap. She sidesteps his counter with fluid grace. While he is mid-swing, helpless to correct his momentum, she strikes. I have memorized every move you made while killing me. Boom, her blade connects with devastating force, blasting the observer back against the stone wall. The massive wound on his chest knits together instantly. Does that count? She asks. Breathless? It does, he replies. Congratulations. Sonya exhales, letting her guard down, but the nightmare is far from over. You defeated me with one sword, he says coldly. He draws a second blade, falling into a dual-wielding stance. His aura explodes with new power. Now, welcome to the second half. The merciless voice echoes in the void, warning her that the 10-minute reprieves are gone forever. Suddenly, a voice from the real world pierces the illusion and snaps Sonya awake from her fever dream, her body heavy with exhaustion. Her roommate Ingrid chirps that it is already 7 in the morning and reminds her to hurry for their general education lecture. Sonya rubs her temples, murmuring that she was trapped in a nightmare. Ingrid, however, shrugs it off as nothing serious and heads out the door. Sonya forces herself through her morning ritual and heads to campus. She sits among the sea of students in the massive lecture hall, eyes fixed on the professor, but as her pen scratches across the paper, her mind drifts back to that harrowing encounter with the observer, questioning if it was truly a hallucination. The memory burns vivid and cold the moment she finally struck the observer down, only to hear his chilling prophecy that her life was just beginning. Clenching her fist, Sonya vows never to let that shadow entity control her destiny again. Meanwhile, in the real world, Ash stirs within his luxury suite deep inside the Camion City, Shattered Lake Prison. He rubs his eyes, baffled by the heavy fatigue weighing him down despite a full night of rest. He swipes open his holographic interface, and a notification from the sorcerer manual flashes his bond with the Berserker Sword Maiden has leveled up. A smirk touches his lips. He is surprised to learn that intense training regimens actually strengthen their spiritual link. He feels a surge of satisfaction that he has already queued up her schedule, eager for his Sword Maiden to keep grinding for experience. At that exact moment, a sharp, aching pain shoots through Sonya's chest. Ignoring the phantom agony, she stands up and answers the professor's query with a radiant, perfect smile. The lecture hall ripples with admiration as she nails the difficult answer, with one male student whispering in awe of her unmatched beauty and sharp intellect. Sonya mentally introduces herself to the audience, revealing the secret of her humble beginnings in a tiny, forgotten village. She recalls the grueling basic education course that became her golden ticket to the prestigious Swordflower University. Pride swells in her chest as she notes she is the only person from her hometown to breach these elite walls in the last 20 years. She remembers her first day, when the city students sneered and whispered about the country, bumpkin walking their halls. But in just 1 month, she mastered the art of makeup and fashion while perfecting a flawless city accent, completing her metamorphosis into the campus queen she is today. Her stunning visuals landed her several high-paying part-time jobs, skyrocketing her popularity. She dominated school activities and hosted major events, cementing her status as a true celebrity. Striding across the manicured lawns, she laughs at the memory of her naive younger self stepping onto these grounds for the first time. She heads to the campus gate, scanning the crowd until she spots her mother, who instinctively calls out to Linda. Sonya quickly corrects her, insisting she use her new city name. The daughter is eager to dazzle her mother with the metropolis, guiding her onto a train. As the city blurs past, Sonya points out the pristine streets, the cloud-piercing skyscrapers, and the parade of sleek luxury cars that had captivated her upon arrival. She recalls the culture shock of seeing polite society and the blinding LED billboards that turn night into day. Now, she watches a smile bloom on her mother's face as she takes in the urban spectacle. Sonya thinks back to her childhood, raised by this strong woman alone after her father, a violent drunk, finally passed away. She remembers her mother, breaking her back with manual labor on the farm, sacrificing everything so Sonya could hold a pen instead of a shovel. Sonya knows she is lucky, as is. Other village children were fed to the factories, destined to rot in that small town forever. As she shows her mother the heart of the city, she is determined to treat her to the finest pleasures available. Sonia drags her to a trendy food truck, then to a high-end boutique where she offers to buy an expensive dress. She then tries to take her mom to a gourmet restaurant, but the humble woman feels out of place and refuses. Instead, they find peace on a park bench, sharing simple snacks beside a dancing fountain. As the sun sets, Sonia walks her mother to the train station, the gateway back to their dusty village. Desperate to extend the moment, Sonia begs her to stay just one more night. Her mother gently declines, admitting she feels small and uncomfortable in the concrete jungle. Sonia vows that one day she will bring her back and force the world of luxury upon her. Her mom squeezes her hand, eyes shining with absolute faith in her daughter's success. She imparts one last piece of wisdom: no matter how hard it gets, she can always return home, where a warm meal and open arms wait for her. She worries that the city is too complex and cruel, suggesting that a quiet life back home is no failure. She presses a crumpled bag of money into Sonia's hands, insisting she has no use for it back on the farm anyway. As her mother boards the train, she waves, assuring her daughter that she is happy. Sonia peers into the bag, finding cash nestled alongside her favorite childhood candy. Just as she goes to secure the money, a shadow looms behind her. A man produces a razor blade, slicing through the fabric of her bag. Without a second thought, Sonia's hand flashes out, chopping the thief's wrist with martial precision. She ignores the groaning man and walks out of the station with ice in her veins. She stands in the center of the chaotic street, letting the neon lights wash over her. She whispers to the wind that this complex, dangerous city is exactly where she belongs. It is late at night, and Sonia is trying to convince. The campus gatekeeper stood firm, citing the strict curfew rules, but Sonia simply unleashed her most potent weapon with a calculated plea and a dazzling smile. The heavy gates creaked open. As she strutted across the moonlit campus, a smirk played on her lips. She knew exactly what had opened that door. In this brutal world, beauty wasn't just an asset, it was a weapon of mass destruction. She reflected on the cold truth: power came in many forms, and her allure was the key to the kingdom. It was the primary reason a girl like her had managed to infiltrate the ranks of high society. Climbing the stairs to her dorm, she offered a silent prayer of gratitude to her mother. Those blessed genes were her armor and her ticket to a better life. But her moment of triumph was short-lived. As she approached her room, a familiar, venomous voice drifted through the wood. One of her roommates was loudly complaining about Sonia's lateness, painting her as a loose woman. "She's probably out flirting with some rich heir," the voice sneered. Sonia pressed her ear against the door, her eyes narrowing. She needed to hear every word of this betrayal. The hateful girl didn't stop there. She mentioned seeing Sonia with her mother outside campus, laughing as she speculated that the mother must be ashamed of such a scandalous daughter. That crossed the line. Rage flared in Sonia's chest like a wildfire. Insulting her was one thing, but dragging her family into the mud, she prepared to storm inside and unleash hell. She gripped the doorknob, knuckles white, ready for war, but suddenly, clang, a deafening metallic impact from inside the room silenced the gossip instantly. The door swung open, revealing Ingrid. With a curt, "Good evening," the stoic girl walked past Sonia and vanished into the hall. Sonia peered inside, confused by the sudden silence. Her eyes fell on the punching bag near the door. A fresh, smoking dent marred its surface. Ingrid hadn't just punched the bag, she had delivered a kinetic warning to shut the gossips up. Remaining in the room were her nemesis, Lois, and Lois's little lapdog, Adele. Sonia sighed internally. Lois, the merchant's daughter, was a creature of pure envy. Lois constantly fired passive-aggressive insults at Sonia's background. It was a classic case of new money versus natural charm. Lois hated that no matter how much gold she wore, she couldn't outshine Sonia. It ate Lois alive that men always gravitated towards Sonia first. Even when Lois acted the part of the refined beauty, Sonia's magnetism was simply undeniable. The rivalry had exploded when Sonia snatched the coveted host role for a major university event. Lois's jealousy curdled into pure hatred, and she began a campaign of social isolation. Lois threw lavish parties exclusively for the water magic majors, taking classmates to high-end restaurants while deliberately leaving Sonia off the guest list. It was a tactical siege. The strategy worked for a while, and the boys began to circle Lois. Eventually, the merchant's daughter set her sights on a handsome senior, believing she had finally won. But Sonia was playing a different game. With a calculated accidental bump, she intercepted the senior. One look at Sonia, and the boy forgot Lois even existed. Once the senior was hooked, Sonia crushed his heart. She knew Lois's pride was too high to ever chase a man who had been rejected by a country bumpkin like Sonia. In Sonia's mind, she was a saint. She had saved Lois from a boring relationship while simultaneously destroying her rival's ego. It was a flawless victory. Sonia's ambition wasn't about love, it was about survival. She needed a man who could be her elevator to the aristocracy, and she had a blueprint to get there. Her research was meticulous. Water sorceresses were statistically the most likely to become noble wives. She would play the role of the elegant support mage perfectly. Swordflower University was famous for churning out elite sorcerers. Sonia planned to use that reputation to graduate as a top-tier water user, the perfect accessory for a powerful lord. She visualized the moment a dashing nobleman introducing her to his mother, cementing her place in the upper echelon. It was the only way to secure her future. This was why she avoided sword sorcery like the plague. Developing a muscular, warrior physique would be a fatal flaw in her plan to seduce a high society husband. Her roadmap was clear: summon her first water spirit by next year, then fully awaken her silver wings before graduation. She would become a magnificent winged sorcerer. The endgame was the intercampus mixer at Truth University. That was the hunting ground. She would infiltrate the event and snare a young nobleman from the oldest bloodlines. Truth University was the #1 academy in Galaxis, a playground for the rich and powerful. It was the perfect ecosystem for a predator like Sonia to find her prey. As she plotted her ascent to power, she sat at her vanity, carefully removing her makeup. She opened her textbook, multitasking like a true strategist. She calculated the cost of the beauty products on her face. Maintaining this level of perfection required immense time and gold, but it was an investment she couldn't afford to skip. She would land a husband from the nobility. She would drag her mother out of their common life and into the world of luxury. Her conviction was absolute. Focus on the sword. A deep voice shattered her thoughts. Sonia jumped, her heart racing. She spun around, searching for the intruder in the dorm room. There, standing casually in the corner, was the observer. He looked at her with intense eyes, commanding her to communicate telepathically. Use your mind's voice, he echoed. Sonia scanned the room in panic. Lois and Adele were right there, but they didn't react. They couldn't see him. The man was a ghost to everyone but her. I am not your enemy, the observer stated calmly. He produced a vial containing a glowing green fluid. You must drink this. Now. Absolutely not, Sonia shot back in her mind. But the observer didn't wait for permission. He tipped the bottle, pouring the liquid into the air. Defying gravity, the green fluid swirled and shot directly into Sonia's throat. She choked as the magical concoction forced its way down, seizing control of her limbs. The observer held out a wooden practice sword. Take it, he ordered. Sonia's eyes burned with defiance. She screamed internally that she would never touch the weapon of a brute. But her body was no longer hers. Like a marionette, she stood up and dressed herself in training gear. Her hand grasped the wooden sword against her will as she marched out the door. As she robotically walked down the hallway, she heard Lois's voice fading behind her. She's probably trying to seduce some sword major now, the girl scoffed. Sonia's body dragged her all the way to the sword training hall. The air was thick with the sound of impact as dozens of trainees battered armored dummies. Among them was Ingrid, her body glistening with sweat. The girl was a machine, fully immersed in the rhythm of the blade, completely unaware of the drama unfolding at the entrance. Ingrid felt strong. She was on the verge of hitting the 10th ring, the legendary threshold required to summon a sword spirit. By next month, she would ascend. But Ingrid shook off the arrogance. The path of the sword required humility and endless grinding. She refocused on her target, steeling her resolve. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the hall shifted. Sonia stepped onto the training floor. The rhythmic thuds of wooden swords died out as every student turned to stare at the delicate beauty holding a weapon she shouldn't have. Her wooden sword crashes against the dummy. But Ingrid can see the amateur flaws in her technique. She is unsteady and painfully sluggish. Ingrid knows the brutal truth. Female sword sorcerers need calloused hands and iron-forged bodies to survive. And she wonders if Sonya has the resolve for that pain. Or perhaps she's just showing off for a boy. Ingrid realizes the target must be Felix, the elite sword magic apprentice currently observing her training with keen interest. Ingrid notes that Felix is the scion of the Voslata family, one of the mighty pillars supporting the Stellaris Council and the absolute peak of nobility. She recalls that his father, Duke Voslata, holds a monopoly on the advanced steelworks, making him a titan of influence and one of the most terrifyingly powerful figures in the nation. Ingrid worries Sonya is pursuing a player, but part of her is just happy to find another sword-obsessed comrade. She turns back to the magic dummy and realizes Sonya has already grazed the edge of the first center ring. After only a few minutes, squinting closely, Ingrid notices that while Sonya's movements are rough and exhausting, she is rigidly adhering to the sword magic manual. Ingrid worries that maintaining such form will drain Sonya's stamina completely in mere minutes. To track her endurance, Ingrid begins counting Sonya's strikes, one by one. After hundreds of blows, Ingrid loses count, her attention locked onto her friend's relentless repetition. Before long, the entire training hall falls silent, watching in awe. The crowd whispers that 90 minutes have passed since she began, and she has surpassed 2,400 hits. Felix's girlfriend, Cecilia, enters the hall, assuming the gathering crowd is admiring her boyfriend's brilliance. Instead, she is shocked to find Felix among the frozen spectators. Staring intensely at Sonya, one look at his face tells her he is captivated. Cecilia glares at Sonya, assuming the girl wore makeup solely to seduce men. Convinced that Sonya is using the sword act to entrap Felix, Cecilia prepares to drag her boyfriend away immediately. She demands to know why everyone is staring. Felix explains that Sonya arrived an hour and a half ago as a complete novice. Yet now she can sever through 9 rings of the target with a single, devastating strike. Cecilia scoffs, asking if the girl was faking being a beginner. Felix admits he initially thought the exact same thing, watching to see when she would hit a wall. But after 90 minutes of observation, his skepticism has transformed into pure admiration. A spike of jealousy hits Cecilia. A random girl has captured Felix's focus so effortlessly. Then the physical reality sinks in. Training for an hour and a half straight without stopping is impossible. She notes that even Felix manages only 3 hours with breaks. Cecilia looks around, seeing men who usually care only for their own gains now pausing to cheer Sonya on as she relentlessly strikes the training dummy. Cecilia releases Felix's arm, accepting her total defeat. In the game of capturing Felix's interest, Sonya has won. Finally, Sonya's blade connects with the 10th ring. The entire hall holds its breath, sitting on the edge of their seats. With that final strike, the practice dummy shatters into splinters. The crowd erupts into wild cheers as Sonya finally collapses in rest. She realizes she is one step closer to summoning a sword spirit and ascending as a winged sorcerer. Her dream of a carefree life feels almost within reach. Ingrid rushes over with water, but suddenly, Sonya feels a cold, liquid sensation slide down her throat. She glances up and spots Felix, but looming behind him is the observer. He has just poured a drink onto the floor, mimicking the sensation she felt. The observer whispers that she cannot rest yet, she must defeat Felix first. The entity explains his desire to orchestrate a clash between her and the strongest warrior in the hall. He is delighted that the target is high nobility, as nothing pleases him more than seeing nobles beaten to a pulp. Sonya begs to switch targets, desperate to avoid any entanglement with Felix. She explains that she knows his reputation. Felix is the notorious playboy of Swordflower University. She recalls seeing him flaunting luxury cars and discarding girlfriends every 3 days like used tissues. Her intelligence notes confirm he has a habit of collecting women. Furthermore, she finds it suspicious that the son of Duke Voslata enrolled at Swordflower University instead of the prestigious Truth University, implying deep involvement in a political mess. She insists to the observer that Felix is a villain to be avoided. Unfortunately, the entity thinks that makes him the perfect opponent. He commands her to smash the sword prodigy and kick the arrogant Stellaris noble to the curb. Despite Sonya screaming internally that she will never do it, her body betrays her, raising the wooden sword at Felix and challenging him to a duel. The crowd roars in excitement. Cecilia boils with rage, convinced Sonya is doing this to bind herself to Felix. Meanwhile, Sonya chants internally that she will not fight, even as her traitorous body keeps the blade leveled at him. Ingrid cries out, reminding Sonya that she's on the brink of collapse after 2 hours of training. She suggests delaying the duel, but Felix refuses. His aura screams desperation. He admits the chilling truth: she is a monster of talent, the second person ever to make him tremble with fear. If he waits until tomorrow, his courage will crumble to dust. He knows he must strike while the fear is fresh. With shaking resolve, he draws his blade. He points the cold steel at Sonya, swearing to defeat her tonight or not at all. The atmosphere shifts. Felix drops into a stance that everyone recognizes, the legendary wave sword style. Sonya's eyes narrow. The Voslata family is renowned for their 4 secret stances, ancient arts capable of summoning spirits. The wave stance is one of their deadliest. She settles into a basic posture, but her mind is elsewhere. She snaps at the invisible observer, demanding to know why she should fight if she is just a puppet on strings. She tries to bargain, demanding control of her own body so she can find a worthy opponent on her own terms. But the observer drops a bombshell. He was never pulling the strings. The body and the power has been hers all along. Sonya freezes in shock. The observer explains the truth. Last night was not just a dream, it was a simulation. She defeated him in that dreamscape and awakened her latent genius. He analyzes her motives. She came to this hall to shatter her limits. She wanted Ingrid and the others to see past her beauty. She wanted to prove she possesses a talent that burns brighter than her looks. With a war cry, Sonya charges at Felix. Steel meets wood in a flurry of strikes. The observer's voice cuts through the chaos, reminding her of her dark motivation. She challenged the golden boy because she loathes him. She hates that he is the school's beloved idol. Felix grits his teeth. He can feel the weight of her strikes, but he presses the offensive. He is confident his superior technique will prevail. His wave sword style is relentless, forcing Sonya back step by step. As she retreats, the observer whispers poison in her ear. Felix is unbeatable, the voice taunts. His technique is flawless. He hypes her up by attacking her pride. Some people are just born with everything. They will always outshine you. The words ignite a fire in her soul. She matches Felix's speed, move for move. Felix is bewildered. Where is this girl getting such monstrous stamina? He decides to end this now. He channels his energy, lighting up the room with a blinding glow. The observer continues his narration. You grip the sword. You walk to the arena. You challenge the strongest warrior here just to prove you are not worthless. Suddenly, the impossible happens. Sonya shifts her footing. To the crowd's horror, she mimics Felix's wave stance perfectly. The spectators gasp. How could she learn a secret family art just by watching it? Once Cecilia smirks, misunderstanding everything. She thinks this is a twisted courtship ritual, humiliate him with his own move, then lose on purpose to set up a second date. Both fighters scream, charging for the final impact. A deafening crack echoes through the hall. A broken shard of wood spins across the floor. It is Sonya's blade that shattered. The crowd shifts their gaze to Felix's left shoulder. A wave sword spirit has materialized. They are in awe. He summoned a life-bound spirit in the heat of battle. Ingrid tries to comfort Sonya. Don't worry, you'll summon one too someday. Sonya stands tall, her eyes fierce. I did not lose, she declares. The crowd rolls their eyes at her stubbornness until snap, the tip of Felix's sword falls off. Silence descends. On Sonya's right shoulder, a matching wave sword spirit glimmers into existence. The students lose their minds. She stole his technique and summoned a spirit in seconds. Those who spent years training feel their spirits break in the face of true genius. Sonya ignores the commotion. She stares into the crowd, locking eyes with the observer. Are you real? She asks. Or just a hallucination of my power? The observer smiles. He walks over, picks up the broken shard, and magically fuses it back to her sword. As he fades into mist, he leaves her with a teasing riddle about his identity. Sonya can only curse at the empty air as he vanishes. Meanwhile, in another reality, Ash stares at his holoscreen. His character, the Berserker Sword Maiden, is leveling up like crazy. She unlocked the wave stance and the wave sword spirit. His eyes widen at a new notification. One-winged sword sorcerer. He theorizes that the number of wings must indicate godlike superpowers. Seeing his sword maiden grow from a novice to a legend makes waking up at 6 to grind totally worth it. But wait, Ash flexes his own muscles. Nothing. He feels exactly the same. He feels scammed. It must be because he is a free-to-play user. Typical pay-to-win trash game mechanics. Suddenly, the prison AI chimes in. Access granted to restricted areas. The heavy cell door slides open. The computer invites him to the cafeteria. Ash pulls up the Shattered Lake Prison manual on his interface. Luxury meals, freedom. This reads more like a vacation resort than a jail. He feels like he's being pranked. It is too convenient. Paranoia creeping in. He steps into the hallway. Silence. Not a single guard in sight. The emptiness is more terrifying than a cage. He sprints to the end of the hall. He stumbles into an indoor park filled with inmates. Finally, he spots a guard lounging on a couch. Relief washes over him. He is not alone. Ash desperately seeks a safety net, feeling naked without any experience points flowing from his blade. He hasn't even unlocked his maiden yet. Craving security, he patrols the cafeteria, searching for food and answers. On a massive digital screen, a politician blathers on, sparking a heated debate between orc and goblin inmates about high-level policy. Suddenly, a prisoner slides up to Ash, claiming to know his secret identity as the supreme leader of the Four Pillars cult. The stranger introduces himself as Igor. He claims Ash's face is plastered all over the media, making him a celebrity in this hellhole. Igor extends a hand, offering a partnership and a grand escape plan. Desperate and naive, Ash accepts the alliance instantly. But just as their fingers are about to touch, a female voice cuts through the noise, threatening to smash Igor's face in. Ash freezes. He whips his head around, stunned to find a woman who looks and sounds exactly like his legendary sword maiden. He heeds her warning instinctively, winding up a punch to deck Igor, but the moment he snaps into action, the chip in his neck pulses red. A system alert screams in his mind, harm to citizens prohibited. Red warning lights strobe behind his eyes, blinding him. His fist freezes mid-air, inches from Igor's nose. His body locks up completely, paralyzed by the prison's dampening tech. Igor sneers at the feeble attempt. Seeing that the cult leader is harmless, the inmate loses interest and walks away, leaving Ash humiliated. The moment the threat leaves, control returns to Ash's limbs. But the sword maiden isn't done with him. She scoffs at his incompetence. She explains the hard truth. The neural chip reads his killing intent and shuts down his motor functions before he can land a blow. It is a terrifyingly efficient technology. While raw combat and magic are sealed here, the prison has its own dark loopholes. Tricks exist for the cunning. For instance, spirit contracts. That man, Igor, he was a succubus in disguise, baiting a trap. That handshake wasn't a greeting, it was a ritual of subservience. Accepting it would have bound Ash to him as a friend and a slave. It would have turned him into a puppet, a fate far worse than the labor contracts of his old world. He narrowly dodged a bullet. Shaken, Ash glances around. Can anyone else see her? He realizes he must look like a total lunatic, arguing with thin air. Ignoring the optics, he presses on, confirming that she is indeed the sword maiden, the avatar he poured his soul into. She nods. If she couldn't see him, she would have doubted his identity as the observer. Their connection is the only proof. They bicker over appearances, noting that neither looks like their official character art. But in this world, skins change like clothes. Ash misses the point entirely and demands she break him out. But his jaw drops when she flatly refuses to lift a finger. The sword maiden sneers. Why should she release him? This garbage dump is the perfect habitat for a useless piece of trash like him. In fact, he should just retire here, live out the rest of his pathetic days in a cell. It's the life he deserves. Ash protests, whining that he was framed and faces a lunar judgment. She laughs in his face, sparking a flash of ego in him. He starts to proclaim himself her superior, but the words die in his throat as her eyes flash with terrifying intensity. She dares him to finish that sentence. Before he can react, she pokes his forehead with the force of a pile driver, knocking him onto the couch. She leans in, her face inches from his, staring into his soul. Her voice drops to a whisper, asking if he truly thinks he is her master. The smile is gone. Ash trembles, wondering if he crossed a line. She is just a virtual character. Without him, the player, she is nothing. But the look in her eyes promises pain. The atmosphere grows heavy with killing intent, and Ash realizes he has no choice but to submit. Gritting his teeth, Ash raises his voice. He declares he isn't her master, but he refuses to be her servant either. If she cannot treat him as an equal, she might as well dissolve back into raw data. He won't be a slave to his own creation. The sword maiden stares at him, silent, stretching for a heartbeat. Then, her frown curls into a knowing, satisfied smirk. She turns away, admitting she is just a construct of his thoughts. But he must honor his words. He will never be her master. She demands a blood oath. If he lies, he will be cursed to lose his face for 10 years, a decade of shame. Ash doesn't blink. With zero hesitation, he swears the oath. Her smile brightens, genuine this time, and she beckons him to follow. Escape is off the table, but breakfast isn't. She knows he's starving. As they walk, she reveals the cruel reality of her presence. She is invisible, untouchable, a phantom to this physical world. Even if she wanted to break these walls, she couldn't. She is only here because of the bond between Sword Maiden and Observer. But there is one thing she can give him. It is time to transfer the massive experience points she racked up during her hellish training sessions. Ash's eyes light up, and he opens his arms to receive the power. But she scolds him instantly for thinking it would be that easy. He can't just download it. To absorb the experience naturally, he has to fight. He has to earn every single point through combat. Ash looks around, hungry for a brawl. His eyes land on a target that screams danger, a man named Lang. Lang is a mountain of muscle, scarred and radiating the aura of a killer. Ash walks up and deliberately knocks the giant's milk to the floor. The slop splashes over the giant's head, yet he offers a terrifyingly polite apology. Though Ash started it, the sheer pressure of his demonic energy forces the rugged man to tremble. Then, in a twist that defies logic, the brute shyly warns him to be careful and recommends the cafeteria milk. Ash stands there, jaw unhinged in disbelief, before grabbing his tray. As he sits, a cackle pierces the air. The Sword Maiden is howling with laughter, amused by the absurdity forced upon them by the situation. It is because of the inhibitor chips implanted in their necks. Violence is impossible here. Any aggression, even intentional, is strictly prohibited. Any attempt to disobey triggers a heart-stopping electric shock. Ash realizes he must find a way to battle without relying on her protection. He decides to play the fool, whining for milk like a toddler, but his death-seeking taunt earns him a one-way ticket across the room. He crashes lightly into Lang, the man from earlier, seizing the chance to gather intel, but his approach is wildly misinterpreted. The muscular giant blushes, insisting he already has a boyfriend. Ash tries to clear the air, but the confusion only deepens. Despite his fearsome appearance, the prisoner is fiercely loyal to his partner. Whatever doubts Ash had, the man's fidelity is absolute. Moving on, they finally address the boy's question. Ash has to forcefully cut through the romantic tension to ask the real question: how does one fight in this prison? Instantly, Lang's expression hardens. If it is violence the boy seeks, he has found the right guide. He belongs to the Deathmatch Society. This is the only group with permission to temporarily bypass the chip's restrictions. Stunned, Ash wonders if the warden truly condones this. Does the system really allow them to fight to the death? The answer is chilling. Death is a byproduct, not murder. A medical base sits beside the arena to revive the fallen within 5 minutes. But if they actually die, the prison couldn't care less. Mid-explanation, realization strikes Lang's eyes. He recognizes the boy as the infamous leader of the Pillar's cult. Sidetracked, he admits a deep fascination with the group. Returning to the grim reality, he notes that Ash's eagerness is timely, as the 15th is fast approaching. Since the newbie looks completely clueless, the veteran spells it out. Everyone here is on death row. The luxury they enjoy is merely the last meal before the slaughter. The only thing waiting at the end is absolute death. Ash expected this, but the confirmation freezes the blood in his veins. The Moon Judgment is a televised execution show held on the 1st and 15th. It generates massive broadcast revenue. In this twisted world, watching prisoners die is primetime entertainment. Ash falls to his knees, crushed by the weight of it, until he learns there is a loophole to escape the event. Every prisoner starts with 50 points, bleeding 10 every month. Hitting 0 isn't the punishment. Rather, the lower your score, the closer you are to the chopping block. This deficit determines who faces the judgment. There are ways to earn points, and the easiest is to create value. Skilled prisoners can offer services to the prison. However, most inmates are merely killers with no trade but violence. For them, the death match is the only way. It operates on a brutal winner-takes-all betting system. Combatants even wear makeup for the cameras. As he speaks, Lang runs his tongue up his milk glass in a grotesque display. He confirms the boy still has the stomach for this society after hearing the truth. Ash doesn't blink, so he is led to the arena. The day's first bout requires a measly 1-point bet, but the stakes climb with every subsequent match. It starts as a slow crawl, allowing fighters to analyze their opponent's weaknesses. With the judgment looming, the hall is packed with desperate souls. As they walk through the shadows, a disturbing question arises. Lang asks if Ash wants to buy some meat. Fresh cuts often fall from the arena stage. A twisted way to spend points. With a devious grin, they enter the main hall, where the crowd greets Lang as the gourmet. Thugs jeer, asking if the pretty boy's his new lover, but a dark threat from the cannibal silences them instantly. The troublemakers retreat, allowing Ash to step into the light. Ash realizes he randomly chose a notorious guide. Below them, a brutal clash unfolds. It is Tiger versus Rudder. An old man stands his ground against a massive orc in the center of the ring. The orc, rusty from lack of combat, made the fatal error of underestimating his elder. Since Tiger bet high, mercy is off the table. Rudder is pummeled until a tusk shatters, his body failing under the assault. The human raises his arms in victory before unleashing a deadly barrage on the orc's face. Yet, the match does not end. The air barrier remains active, signaling the fight must continue. In this pit, there is no surrender. Only death or total unconsciousness will lower the cage. One must keep overwhelming the enemy, completely crushing their opponent. Countless fools have overestimated their skills, only to be slaughtered by a rival hungry for points. In this hell, the death match exists for one reason: to transfer points from the weak to the strong. Speaking of points, Ash notices a deadly discrepancy in the bets. This is the cruel law of the arena. Prisoners must wager more than their previous match. Tiger has survived 34 battles, forcing him to bet 35 points. Now, Rudder, however, has only fought 10 times and clings to a measly 5 points. Destiny is cruel. The weak are always fed to predators they cannot defeat. As they speak, the barrier dissolves, and the orc's massive body collapses with a thud. The slaughter ends. Medical staff rush in, dragging the broken corpse to the infirmary like a sack of meat. Tiger retreats, feigning exhaustion, but it is clearly a hustle. Even the sword maiden must acknowledge the old monster's power, questioning the source of his strength. The answer lies in the arena's laws. Mana is sealed here, but physical brutality is fair game. Most sorcerers are frail as twigs when their mana is locked away, but a select few are different. Body sorcerers, warriors who refine their very flesh and technique. And beyond them exist monsters who alter their bodies until the enhancements become permanent. Tiger's one such beast, a freak of nature known as a masochist sorcerer. Suddenly, the spotlight shifts to Ash. He is already in the pit. There is no escape. The Sword Maiden commands him to choose a brawler, advising him to match bare fists against bare fists. He is too frail to wield a weapon for long. Obediently, Ash turns to the crowd, asking if he can find an unarmed opponent. A mysterious figure steps forward, grinning like a shark that just found blood. Ash admits he only has 1 point to bet. He is hardly a meal worth hunting. But surprisingly, the prisoner laughs it off, even offering to stake his own points. The trap is sprung. Igor steps into the light, claiming his fists are as soft as cotton. But as he prepares for war, the crowd's reaction makes Ash realize the terrifying truth. This will be a massacre. Igor insists on a fair fight, but his title as leader of the Four Pillars cult suggests otherwise. The bloodthirsty cheers confirm that this man does not fight with honor. Ash feels a glimmer of hope, remembering the Sword Maiden's warning to never accept an offer. But the maiden simply scoffs at his naivety. He preaches about refusing deals, yet there he stands, willingly. Walking into Igor's kill zone, realization strikes like a hammer. He foolishly agreed to the match. His legs tremble as he steps forward. A strange compulsion grips him. He felt that fighting was his only choice. He had fallen into a succubus trap, where the option to say no was erased from his mind. The moment of his seduction flashes in his memory. The Sword Maiden lectures him again. Never carelessly answer an invitation. He is the final observer. And, as such, he must reject the world's temptations with a flat refusal. To survive, he must seize his destiny with his own two hands, channeling the aura of a demon lord. Ash turns away, ironically rejecting her advice in the moment. Just like that, the barrier hums to life. The battle begins, the limiter on his chip releases, and it feels like heavy shackles have shattered. Igor wastes no time. He dashes forward with fists like cannonballs. The young man instinctively raises his guard, but the veteran anticipates the move and sweeps his legs. Ash crashes face first, rolling desperately to regain his footing, but the predator is already upon him. A devastating punch buries itself in his exposed gut. The impact is sickening, forcing him to vomit all over the arena floor, but Igor is far from finished. He smiles, telling his victim to grit his teeth. The rookie obeys, tears of agony already welling in his eyes. Another heavy blow lands, smashing into the side of his skull. The poor young man stumbles like a drunkard, barely clinging to consciousness. His body slams against the energy barrier. Igor unleashes a merciless barrage of strikes. Shielding his head with his bruised arms, Ash screams internally. When will the experience transfer kick in as the pain mounts? He cries out to the sword maiden, begging her to take control, but she remains cold. She tells him to fight back, explaining that experience transfers faster with every beating he takes. The sword maiden acts indifferent, but her gaze is sharp and observant. He looks pathetic, yes, but he pushes his body to the absolute limit, refusing to break. In fact, she senses something deeper. Even without the sorcerer manual, his core is forged of iron. As she suspected, he truly is the final observer, fueled by the grit of a corporate slave who never quits. Ash prepares a counterattack. He clenches his jaw and throws a punch, but the blow is soft and flimsy. Igor dodges it with a laugh. Finding the attempt cute, Igor slaps his face with insulting ease. The one-sided beatdown continues, and the crowd roars as Igor unleashes his signature techniques. It was a massacre where enemies seemed to throw themselves directly onto his fists. Even heavy hitters like Tiger and Lang had to acknowledge his strength, though they vaguely danced around the question of who would actually win. By this point, Ash looked less like a fighter and more like bruised fruit. Igor sneered, asking if the boy knew how he had survived this long despite being so physically pathetic. The truth was harsh. Nothing about Ash was special. To Igor, they were both weaklings physically, but the difference, people like Ash were livestock. Igor was the master butcher who skinned and processed them. Even races with superior bodies crumbled before him, defeated the very moment they stepped into the ring. Watching Ash lunge with a desperate, flailing hope, Igor already saw the future. He read the boy's intentions like an open book, preparing the counterattack. Every thought in Ash's mind streamed into Igor's consciousness, plain as day, like a lamb awaiting the slaughter. All that remained was to devour his pitiful opponent. With a confident smirk, Igor wove past the attack and brought his elbow down to end it, but to his absolute shock, Ash slipped the strike with perfect precision and fired back. The veteran leaped away, his instincts screaming at a danger that was completely unforeseen. This was an undeniably bad omen. Toying with his food was no longer an option. He had to put the boy to sleep immediately. Meanwhile, the bloodthirsty crowd went wild, screaming for the blonde veteran to bring a blade and carve his enemy up next time. However, Lang noted that victory wouldn't come as easily as the mob expected. Looking back at the arena, the dynamic had shifted. Igor, who had landed every hit effortlessly, was now missing more and more strikes. It was finally a real show. Some whispered that Ash had been faking his weakness all along. Tiger shut that down instantly. The boy really was frail just moments ago. His body had never been tempered by the fires of real combat. Lang knew this best, as the one who dragged him here, but in mere minutes, Ash had developed razor-sharp combat instincts. It was the wrong person, at the wrong place, awakening the absolute worst kind of talent. It was a tragedy in the making. For the first time, the cult leader was forcing the beauty beast onto the defensive. The sword maiden smiled. She knew the end was near. Every era has its theme. In this age, humanity no longer conquers new lands. Instead, the theme of this era was sophisticated domination. In a world where class is determined at birth, psyche sorcerers walk as apex predators. Even the ruling clans fear them, and knowledge of their dark arts is hidden from the lower castes. However, Igor had stumbled upon the perfect conditions by luck, teaching himself to become a psyche sorcerer. On top of that, he already possessed the base magic spirit contract, making his word absolute law. As long as his conditions were met, his ability was invincible. He would be a king wherever rules existed, and this prison was his kingdom. With this power, he dominated everyone around him. Even after he killed them in a death match, they would accept another battle until their points ran dry. But now, the young man standing before him had evolved. He went from a silent, docile animal waiting for death to a louder animal, still waiting for death. With a chilling smile, Igor admitted he had underestimated the boy. Ash's learning speed hinted at monstrous potential, but his raw physical strength was still trash. After this match, Igor resolved never to fight him again. And thanks to the rules, Ash couldn't challenge him either. Knowing the system and using it to rule, that is true power. That is the divide between the dominator and the dominated. Ignoring the monologue, Ash simply grumbled, telling him not to block his view. Igor froze, completely caught off guard. Ash blankly stated that Igor's face was too perfect to look at for a long time. That single, bizarre thought consumed the sorcerer's mind. It was the first time he had ever received such genuine praise. Unconsciously, his guard dropped. A heavy fist slammed squarely onto his chin. Igor collapsed to the floor, lights out. Just like that, the match was over. Ash was declared the victor. But as the adrenaline left his veins, crushing exhaustion took hold, and he crumpled to the ground as well. His first taste of violence was painful and unbearable. He finally understood the true nature of the death match, turning prisoners into soulless entertainment for the wealthy elite. They were all trapped, doomed to die by judgment or in the ring. Yet, his rational mind whispered a dark truth. This made sense for criminals. If he weren't a prisoner himself, he'd probably be in the stands, clapping for the very system that now enslaved him. As he debated with himself, he realized the agony in his body had vanished. Suddenly, a voice chirped, telling him to go chase dinner time if he was awake and healed. Ash snapped his eyes open, only to bulge them in terror. The figure looming over him wore the haunting mask of a plague doctor. The doctor seemed worried by his panic, but assured him that they had treated him well. Once Ash confirmed they were just a healer, he jokingly asked for plastic surgery to make him handsome. It was just friendly, nonsensical banter to break the tension, but to his shock, the doctor excitedly began offering a laundry list of extreme modification options. Terrified by the fanatic response, Ash quickly declined. Ash claims he has empty pockets, but the figure shakes their head. They don't want his money. They want him. A heavy, awkward silence fills the room following this twisted confession. Ash decides to play along, awkwardly laughing that they are moving too fast. But the masked figure cuts the act. They want his body specifically, to carve it up. They need a live subject to practice surgery on. In fact, they are so desperate, they offer to pay for the privilege of cutting him open. They try to sell the idea, listing what a stroke of luck it is to have an elite credentialed surgeon work on him for free. But Ash isn't a fool. He knows the laws of this world well. The most expensive things in life are the ones labeled free. Under pressure, the doctor finally admits there is a tiny risk. It might sound harmless to the naive, but Ash hears the warning bells loud and clear. He narrows his eyes, demanding the healer explain every single specific danger. In this place, medicine is born from spirits, entities that can manipulate reality as long as moisture exists in the body. The standard method is hydrotherapy, but it is far from perfect. It is plagued with flaws, calculation errors, and unwanted regrowth. However, the spirit is like a muscle. It evolves with practice and becomes deadlier, or more efficient, with time. And what better laboratory than a prison here? Inmates teeter on the brink of death every single day. It is a paradise for evolution. Once again, the prisoners are reduced to mere resources, livestock used to level up the healers. The only silver lining is that this torture doesn't cost any contribution points, so it isn't complete slavery. Ash sighs, shifting the topic to scold the healer for their Grim Reaper attire. But the ominous outfit has a purpose. It acts as armor, protecting the doctor from patients who lash out in shock when operations go horribly wrong. It is a measure meant to preserve the doctor-patient relationship. But to Ash, it just signals a terrifyingly high failure rate. Frustrated by the incompetence, the young man snaps. He scolds the doctor, hurling painful accusations at their fragile ego. The words strike deep. The doctor crumbles, meekly explaining it wasn't their fault, tears streaming down from behind the mask. Ishba looks at the pathetic display and asks if they know their fatal flaw. It isn't their skill. It is their voice. It lacks power, firmness, and confidence. Because they sound so insecure, the patient instinctively blames them for every side effect. Ash begins his lecture. He passionately commands the doctor to speak with conviction even when they fail. They must sound like a god. That is only the first step. Next, they must gaslight the bad patients, scold them for not taking care of their own bodies since no human is perfect. The doctor will always find a flaw to exploit. As long as they master these two psychological tricks, they can establish absolute authority and frame their butchery as a divine privilege. This is the dark wisdom Ash gathered from years of corporate warfare. Moving forward, there is only one rule. No matter the outcome of the surgery, the doctor must insist they did their absolute best. Encouraged by his twisted coaching, the doctor starts screaming the mantra, repeating the idea with newfound fire. Ash nods, satisfied. They will figure out the rest eventually. It is a toxic technique from the corporate world, but it might just save this healer's career. But then, the student surpasses the master. The doctor asks if he is sure he doesn't want plastic surgery, Cruel adding that it is rude to walk around society with a face like his. Ash pauses. He isn't sure if he should feel insulted or proud that his student is already applying the lesson so ruthlessly. He turns away with a smirk, betting that his face is still better than whatever is hiding under that mask. Frustrated, they bicker back and forth. The doctor insists they aren't ugly, sparking Ash's curiosity. For a split second, it feels like the mask is coming off, but instead, the doctor abruptly hands him a tag with the number 222. He is ordered to keep it on his person at all times, marking him as their exclusive patient. This reignites Ash's suspicion about the doctor's true identity, but they dodge the interrogation, simply repeating the command to carry the tag. With that, the patient is dismissed, shooed away to get dinner before the cafeteria shuts its doors, but before he vanishes, Ash turns back with a request. He asks the healer to cut him an apple the next time they meet. Just like that, a date is set to share a meal. But this isn't friendship. It is a psychological trick. By asking for small, trivial favors, he builds a sense of intimacy. He used this exact manipulation to secure bonuses and awards in his past life. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. Another doctor emerges from the curtains, demanding to know why number 222 is still there. The senior doctor realizes what happened and questions if the subordinate spoke to the patient. It is a grave violation. The Human Rights Association must never know about the dark experiments happening here. Terrified, number 222 flees, reminded that they are nothing without their supervisor. It seems the senior is intent on establishing dominance, reminding the rookie of their place. They are only here because of nepotism and connections, a weakness the senior is all too happy to exploit. The senior's gaze shifts to where Ash stood. His recovery is faster than the others. A cruel thought crosses the doctor's mind. He can't wait for Ash to be beaten to a pulp again. After so much struggle, Ash hoped he had found a sanctuary. But it seems nothing has changed. This place is just another hell. He won 45 points from the match, but he still has to face the judgment in a few days. Points won't save him from that. Every prisoner must face their first judgment to survive. Honestly, for a normal man, the odds aren't terrible, but Ash is no normal man. As the leader of the Pillars cult, he is walking into the lion's den with a target painted on his back. Ash had become the primary prey of this twisted event, but the young man had absolutely no intention of handing over his life without a fight. Lang broke the silence with a challenge. Someone wanted to duel Ash. This was the true ambush he had been lying in wait for back in the cafeteria. The wager, a staggering 36 points. It was almost unheard of for a veteran to risk that much against a total newbie. His opponent was named Varkas. Ash had never heard of him. But then, Lang dropped another name, Silent. Ash froze, tilting his head in confusion. The veteran watched his reaction like a hawk, but quickly brushed it off, claiming he just remembered an old acquaintance. Moving on to business, they discussed the enemy's weapon, a simple, unadorned sword. The mention of a blade made Ash's gaze drift toward the sword maiden. However, his eyes were focused on her curves rather than her combat advice. She caught him staring and snapped at him to speak up. Ash had a burning question: could he touch her physically? Just as she could touch him, but the maiden had zero patience for his games. She whispered the next move into his mind. Ash smirked and looked at Lang. Tell Vargas to wash his neck and wait. I'm coming for him tomorrow. The deal was sealed. The two prisoners parted ways, with Lang heading off to meet his boyfriend. But strangely, he walked toward the death match arena, not the cells. Ignoring the oddity, the sword maiden gestured for Ash to return to his quarters. She promised they would be busy exploring a world he had never known. Ash's imagination ran wild with dirty thoughts, and he blushed, sprinting back to his room like an excited puppy. Meanwhile, the deathmatch arena was a slaughterhouse. Lang reported that Ash accepted the duel not because of the mysterious name drop, but simply because he craved a sword fight. Varkas promised to repay the favor soon, but the bald prisoner smiled darkly, saying payment was due now. He wanted to know why Varkas was interested in the boy, and who this silent figure really was. Varkas agreed to speak, warning him that some knowledge carried a heavy burden. In the background, Lang continued to feast on the flesh of a fallen gladiator. Between bites, he admitted he preferred staying away from the big shots. Swallowing a chunk of meat, he mused that Ash looked more like an innocent child than a cult leader. Varkas shook his head. Anyone who steps foot in this prison is far from innocent. Later, in the dark corridors, Varkas confirmed the match was set. A guard approached, ordering him to destroy the boy, completely damage him so badly that not even a two-winged healer could save his life. If Varkas killed the boy tomorrow, the elf prisoner would finally be released from this hellhole. However, Silent had decreed that Varkas and the child he protected could not stay in the city. Silent refused to breathe the same air as them. The guard shoved Varkas forward, treating the proud warrior like common trash. The elf death row inmate swallowed his pride, scolded for acting like a noble while in chains. Meanwhile, Ash was oblivious to the conspiracy. Deep in the conversation with the sword maiden, she had news. The good news, the government would provide lifetime housing. The bad news, his head could be blown off at any second. Even a powerhouse like Tiger was helpless because of the explosive chip in his neck. Escape was impossible. The chip was a cruel leash that could force him to obey any command or face instant death. Surgical removal was off the table. The device had already fused with his very bone marrow. It was a part of him now. Desperate, Ash asked if sorcery could remove it. The maiden smiled with an eerie confidence. There are plenty of ways. The most viable option was a specific miracle of sword magic. A legendary defensive skill designed to purge all abnormal states. It could wipe the chip's control from his body instantly. But to cast miracles, he needed magic spirits. There were 4 paths to power. One naturally resonate with the arcane world. Impossible, as the chip blocked his connection. 2 trade with other users. Impossible, as Ash was destitute and had nothing to offer. 3 kill an owner and seize their spirit by force. Also impossible for now. That left only the 4th option: hunt a wild spirit directly within the arcane realm. But the catch was brutal. To enter the realm, one needed to tap into a magi spirit to let their consciousness slip through. He needed a spirit to enter the realm, but he was going to the realm specifically because he didn't have a spirit. It was the classic paradox, like a fresh graduate realizing every entry-level job requires 3 years of experience. As Ash began to spiral into despair, the sword maiden interjected. He didn't need his own spirit for this method. Ash spun around, hope reigniting in his eyes. She reminded him that she was a sword spirit. Since they bonded through the manual, she could act as his key, She could take him across the threshold, confused but excited. Ash hurriedly checked his manual to see if such a feature existed. To his shock, an extra function module had appeared. He clicked the confirmation boxes, signaling he was ready for the dive. Silence followed. He noticed the sword maiden simply sitting there, smiling mysteriously. He snapped at her to hurry up. She stood up to prepare, leaving him waiting in suspense. The maiden mocked him gently, saying a novice like him wouldn't understand her preparations. With that, she vanished into thin air, leaving Ash completely alone in his room. He collapsed onto his bed, physically and mentally drained from the day's madness. Meanwhile, in Stellaris, which sits 3 hours ahead of the prison's time zone, the girl's dormitory was buzzing. Sonia's real body had just collapsed, utterly exhausted from her brutal training regimen with Ingrid. Her schedule was a nightmare of advanced classes, sparring sessions, and nocturnal sword magic drills to master the elusive wave sword technique. She is currently the personal disciple of Professor T, a legendary sword saint on the verge of manifesting his fourth wing of power. He offered to mentor Ingrid too, but the stubborn girl wants to carve her own path to greatness. Truly, Sonia would have foolishly accepted Felix's duel if not for her friend's sharp guidance. The professor has already registered her for the prestigious Truth University tournament, granting her full access to their elite facilities. This explosive news immediately grabs Adele's attention, and she begs for an introduction to any handsome scholars, but then she calls out to Lois, who has sat in icy silence the entire time. Sonia declares she would never forget her roommates. This casual kindness feels like a mockery, making the jealous girl tremble as she crushes the book in her hands. The tension in the room spikes. It was obvious Lois was at her breaking point, ready to explode. But to their utter surprise, she suppresses her rage and regains a cold composure. Dissatisfied with the lack of reaction, the sword maiden exits the room, heading toward the mediation hall. As the door clicks shut, Adele turns to Lois with a gaze full of pity. She attempts to comfort her, whispering that there is no need to humor an arrogant country bumpkin. However, Lois is smart enough to accept the bitter reality of her defeat. Sonia has climbed to a height where Lois must crane her neck just to see her, yet she swears on her pride that she will not bow her head after graduation. Unsure how to navigate this heavy atmosphere, Adele retreats with a worried expression, deciding to give her ambition-fueled friend some space. Meanwhile, Sonia arrives at the Grand Mediation Hall, a sanctuary designed exclusively for students diving into the arcane realm. With her identity verified, she receives a strange instruction walk directly into the solid wall. Trusting the system, she steps forward and phases through the masonry like a ghost. Inside this hidden chamber, a miracle accelerates the cognitive processing of everyone present. The observer, Ash, has been spiritually tethered to her this whole time. Since he is still working late into the night, he shamelessly demands by overtime pay. But knowing she is broke, he proposes a sinister alternative: she will become his employee. Since she hasn't graduated from the academy, she qualifies only as an unpaid intern. It is a scam, yet he has undeniably poured blood and sweat into training her, clearly planning to reap a massive return on investment. Suddenly, his voice drops to a deadly serious whisper. All she needs to do is stay alive. He quickly laughs it off as a joke, admitting he is currently too spiritually weak to breach the arcane realm alone. As such, he requires her vessel to carry him across the threshold. Sonia passes through a sealed gate and finds herself standing on a serene plain beneath a breathtaking starry sky. Sitting on the spectral grass, she summons her sword spirit and focuses. The bond tears the gates open, and she feels the sensation of free falling into the depths of the arcane world. Panicking, she reaches out to the observer, but he calmly assures her that he is right there. A sacred destiny binds their souls. After all, when she opens her eyes, finding herself on a small boat, she is shocked to see the observer's material form. He looks just as baffled to see hers. The two have entered the spirit realm for the first time, floating upon the endless sea of knowledge. While Ash is delighted to be wearing his game character's signature outfit, Sonia is rambling about the lore. Every sorcerer's first stop in this realm is this vast ocean. However, she has no idea why there is a boat The textbooks explicitly state that travelers arrive bare. This implies zero external aids. The legends say people soak in these waters and have no choice but to swim or sink. Ash confidently fabricates a lie, claiming her soul was split one part boat, one part human. When she questions this logic, he dares her to swim away, betting she is bound to the vessel. She takes the bait, jumps in, and swims back a moment later, completely disproving his nonsense. The observer's miscalculation makes her smirk, until she realizes his true intention. He is shamelessly staring at her soaking wet clothes. Despite his protests that it was a scientific test, his perversion earns him a brutal punch to the skull. He scoffs at the boat's existence. But Sonya argues that this is a massive deal because drowning is the #1 cause of death for sorcerers in the path of magic. The arcane realm is the ultimate training ground, and many dedicate their lives to its mysteries. However, this pursuit causes countless greedy souls to be devoured by the unforgiving sea. Dying here inflicts a 3-day mental coma in the real world. The soul suffers devastating trauma. The stronger the mage, the heavier the backlash. Novices only lose 3 days. Silver ranks lose 15, and gold ranks lose months. Meanwhile, sanctuary and legendary sorcerers can lose years of progress. If one cannot explore the realm, their growth decays by 90%, forcing different strategies. Some play it safe, choosing to grow at a snail's pace. Others gamble everything to reach the apex. Of course, losing that gamble turns a genius into a broken wreck. With these stakes, it becomes terrifyingly clear having this boat is akin to a god-tier cheat code. Getting in, Ash connects the dots, realizing this authority stems from the sorcerer's manual. While other systems remain dormant, the vessel responds to his command. A holographic interface even manifests, offering a novice guide, but the boat lurches violently. Sonya is rowing manually with brute strength, and Ash insists on taking the helm. Her eyes widen in disbelief. How could he navigate this chaotic realm? As Ash pauses to study the tutorial, she sighs, dismissing it as a farce. Even the great Till lacked a guide here. In the arcane, ignorance is the norm, and knowledge is the ultimate prize. Yet, one rule reigns supreme: never stagnate. Lingering too long tricks the physical body into believing it has perished, causing the heart to cease. Ash is taken aback by her fear of mortality, having expected a thrill-seeker. Indeed, the old Sonya had nothing to lose. But now, she's a prodigy destined for gold rank in 20 years, and the legendary sanctuary tier in 40. Gold grants nobility, while sanctuary offers the power to shake the heavens. Opting for survival, she steers toward the white mist, a zone rumored to bring fortune. Suddenly, the vessel surges, executing a sharp U-turn under Ash's absolute command. With a stoic expression, he reveals the truth: he summoned this boat, and he controls it. Before her protest can leave her lips, the mist embraces her. Light dances in her eyes as ancient sword techniques flood her mind. Pure sword magic courses through her veins. In this realm, movement equals enlightenment. The energy condenses into silver mana, birthing the mark of a one-winged sorcerer. A spectral feather manifests on her back. While she basks in power, Ash scrutinizes the holographic map like a student cheating on a test. The interface lays bare the realm's secrets, highlighting worthless zones and death traps. Yet, one location beckons with the promise of treasure. He aligns their course, and as they breach the perimeter, Sonya spots an island shrouded in mist. Shock paralyzes her. It is the very dreamscape where the observer tested her. She misinterprets the situation, convinced Ash is a hidden master guiding her path. They dock, and as they step onto the shore, the fog instantly dissipates. A gunman stands guard, reciting a lethal mantra. Beyond 7 steps, the gun is fast. Within 7 steps, it is absolute. He raises his weapon, deaf to Ash's attempts at diplomacy. Bang, the muzzle flashes. Ash barely twists away, the bullet grazing his leg. The physical wound is minor, but his spirit avatar flickers and fades. He realizes the horror damage here drains the soul energy of his physical body. Before he can react further, Sonya becomes a blur of motion. The gunman reacquires his target, finger tightening on the trigger with a roar, but the sword, Maiden, is faster. She invokes the wave sword magic spirit, her blade descending like a crashing tide. The slash cleaves the bullet in midair and staggers the enemy. Ash seizes the opening, locking the gunman's body in a grapple. Opportunity flashes. Sonya lunges, driving her steel through the phantom's skull. The enemy dissolves into smoke. Victory is theirs. Breathless, they begin to bicker, but a strange phenomenon silences them. An object materializes from the enemy's remains. Ash is bewildered, but Sonya's eyes widen in recognition. This is a legacy island, and that tome is the legendary gun sorcerer's manual. Ash reels in shock. To find a second manual of this caliber so easily defies all logic. Flashback. A young boy displays prodigal aim, his arrows striking nimble prey without fail. He returns home with his father, spoils in hand, a smile on his face. But horror awaits. A villager collapses, chest obliterated. A horde of monsters marches on the horizon. Leading them is an orc clad in iron, wielding a smoking firearm. Father and son unleash their arrows, but the wooden shafts shatter against the enemy's plate armor. Powerless, they watch the massacre unfold. The monsters slaughter the townsfolk and seize the city. Desperate, the father scoops up his son and flees into the wilderness. They reach safety, but the cost is paid in blood. The father's knees buckle, and he collapses, life fleeing his eyes. The boy watches his protector take his final breath. Grief ignites into a blazing inferno of rage. He dons his father's hat, tears streaming down his face, and lies in wait. An orc gunman patrols the tall grass. Thwack! An arrow pierces its skull. The boy claims the monster's weapon. The hunter has become the avenger. He hunts down unsuspecting enemies. Off balance. Before he can recover, Ash follows up, grappling his entire body to lock him down. With the enemy restrained, she is free to strike. She drives her blade straight through the soul's head. The gunman dissolves instantly into a puff of smoke, and the two sigh in relief. Having survived the unexpected battle, they begin to bicker, but a mysterious object catches their eye, manifesting from where the enemy stood. While he is confused, Sonya recognizes it instantly. It is a treasure from a legacy island of this realm, and the book is the legendary gun sorcerer manual. He stands frozen in shock, never expecting to find another manual so easily. The scene shifts to the past. Small, nimble creatures dart through the forest, only to be struck down by a boy's arrow. Home with his father after the successful hunt, he carries his spoils with a smile, but then horror strikes. They see a villager's chest blasted open. On the horizon, a horde of monsters approaches, clad in armor. One orc wields the very smoking gun that took the villager's life. The boy and his father draw their bows to retaliate, but they're weak. Arrows merely bounce off the enemy's steel plating. With no defense against the firearms, the monsters wreak havoc, gunning down everyone in the city and seizing control. The father manages to carry the boy far away to safety. But the moment the danger passes, his knees buckle, and he collapses to the ground, lifeless. The boy watches his father take his final breath. Consumed by rage and sorrow, he dons the fallen hat, and with tears in his eyes, waits for a target. An orc gunman walks through the tall grass, but drops dead instantly as an arrow pierces his skull. The boy seizes the dead monster's firearm and begins his path of revenge. A few unsuspecting enemies. At first, the beasts were slaughtered by the dozen, but even as they adapted to his presence, the mindless monster stood no chance against a master. He was a supreme sharpshooter, wielding foreign steel like an extension of his own body. He picked them off one by one, dancing through their attacks with lethal grace. Every trap he laid became a grave for his enemies. He started by exterminating the horde that destroyed his village, piling their corpses high. But the thirst for vengeance is endless. Years bled into decades. His youth faded, yet his grim mission remained carved in stone. Eventually, he found his calling in an orc eradication unit recruitment flyer. He joined the brigade, turning his personal vendetta into a career. For decades, he bathed in the blood of the race that stole his family. He was finally granted a Medal of Honor, but peace never came to his heart. Retired, he sat in a rocking chair, gun in hand, watching over the land he had liberated. He took a swig of strong liquor to drown the memories. A rabid wolf appeared. He shot it dead. Another drink, and his vision blurred. This time, a human fell to his bullet, then another, and madness had consumed him. He stumbled into his home, gun smoking, and raised the barrel toward his own lover. She stared back, eyes deep with sorrow. But her sadness turned to shock as the old soldier collapsed. He hit the ground, finally succumbing to death before he could pull the trigger. Ash finished reading the manual. Sonia stared at him, stunned that he had actually read the entire life log. On the final page, the image of the soldier's medal began to glow. A blue wisp of energy spiraled out from the page. It was the spirit of rapid fire. A boon granting 2 consecutive shots with deadly precision and range. A system window popped up before Ash's eyes, explaining the stats. Then, the golden question appeared: currency recharge was available. The system asked if he wanted to exchange the spirit for points. Ash's eyes glowed with greed and excitement, realizing the untapped potential in his hands. With the sought-after magic spirit floating in his palm, he snapped back to reality. Nervous, he offered it to the sword maiden. "Do you want this?" She shook her head. It was neither a general spirit nor a sword spirit. For her, taking it would be nothing but a waste of precious funds. Ash tilted his head, confused. Money? What does money have to do with power? Sonia sighed, wondering if he was mocking her poverty. How could he not know basic common sense unless he was some filthy rich young master who never had to worry about feeding his spirits? Humoring his ignorance, she explained the harsh truth. Spirits need to be fed coins to survive. The higher the quality, the more expensive the meal. If they go unfed, they starve and vanish into nothingness. They can consume materials, but that is tedious. Cold, hard currency is the only convenient way. Furthermore, a spirit's mere existence constantly drains a sorcerer's mental energy. It is a burden on the mind and the wallet. Ash nodded, finally understanding that quality triumphs over quantity. Spirits are divided into factions: gun, sword, masochist, and fist. Each faction has strict requirements for their wielder. However, those without restrictions are called general spirits, usable by almost anyone. A true sorcerer's deck is usually a strategic mix of these specialized and general spirits. It is all about balance. That said, Sonia had zero interest in an antique. That spirit was outdated trash that would not even fetch a good price at the school exchange. Rapid fire was the meta 100 years ago. Modern pistols can fire 7 bullets in 1 second. This spirit was a relic of the past. With her permission to scrap it, Ash initiated the exchange. The metal faded from his arm, dissolving into light. He looked at his status screen expectantly. He had earned 10 points. It was pathetic. It wasn't enough for a gotcha draw. The system required one more one-winged spirit to roll the dice. Spirits held the power to reshape the world, yet their trade-in value was cheaper than minimum wage. The irony was bitter. Ash shifted his focus to the notebook in his hands. It was a sorcerer's manual, a diary that condensed a user's entire life experience. When a sorcerer dies, their soul returns to the arcane realm. Their memories and skills are compressed into a single book, a legacy for the finding. This book could be absorbed like metal, granting the reader a random skill from the original owner. It was instant power. Since he took the spirit points, he offered the book to Sonia. She refused immediately. Such texts carry the weight of a soul and can corrupt the reader. One can only safely absorb manuals that align with their own worldview. If the philosophies clash, the mind breaks. If there is no discomfort, it is safe. Ordinary sorcerers are lucky to absorb 2 out of 10 manuals they find without going insane. But Ash asked, "How do I do it?" It seemed his worldview was incredibly tolerant, or perhaps his moral baseline was flexible enough to accept anything. He absorbed the book instantly, gaining counter-recon mastery. Suddenly, the earth groaned beneath their feet. The legacy island began to sink, crashing into the sea like so many others before it. Once a legacy is claimed, the island has served its purpose. It returns to the dark depths of the ocean, vanishing from the world. In the arcane realm, anything is possible. Explorers encounter the ghosts of countless predecessors, walking the paths of the dead. Their own traces will remain here, and centuries later, new explorers will face the challenges they leave behind. It is an endless cycle. Sonia looked at Ash, wondering if he lived a life he could proudly show to future generations. But their philosophical moment was cut short by a roar. A massive beast erupted from the sea. The waves tossed them violently, and their boat capsized as the monster fired water cannons from its gaping maw. Sonya screamed for him to control the boat and steer them to safety, but Ash hesitated. Could he pilot the vessel while it was completely flipped over? Fortunately, his power surged. The engine roared to life even upside down, and they sped away from the jaws of death. They reached the safe zone just in time, wondering if the beast was still on their tail. They immediately started bickering, but they had both agreed on one thing: survival. This area after fruitlessly sailing for an hour earlier. Doubts began to gnaw at her mind. Why didn't he strike sooner? But then, the realization hit her. If she was powerless, how could he be any different? His logic exposed a potential weakness, yet she crushed the rising thoughts of rebellion. His grip on her soul remained absolute. Even the entity known as T was oblivious to his existence. He was a predator camouflaged among prey. In this realm where all sorcerers stood as equals, only he could perceive the invisible dangers. He was a true observer, a being transcending the hierarchy. She could not waste this bond on petty revenge. Fate had chosen her, but that luck was fragile. If he discovered how truly ordinary she was, he would toss her into the abyss without a second thought. Yet, why did a god ask such mortal questions? Sonya's mind raced. It was a test. He was feigning ignorance to gauge her utility. Ash pointed to a beast, demanding answers. She played her part perfectly, identifying the creature. It was common fodder in the arcane realm, but her words seemed to unlock something within him. With her guidance, the chaos of the dimension began to make sense. Here, death yielded power, slay a beast, and harvest the condensed knowledge within as a magic spirit. The laws of this world were constantly evolving with every update. For instance, sorcerers in reality painstakingly engineered new systems, but here, the arcane birthed them directly from the ashes of the fallen. If the system deemed it chaotic enough, entirely new species would spawn, expanding the realm's biodiversity. It was a perfect balance. Those in the waking world and those in the dream realm stood on equal ground. Ash scoffed. It was just like his past life. No rest for the wicked, no retirement for the weary. Sorcerers were merely cosmic wage slaves, grinding for eternity. But instead of despair, a fire lit in his eyes. He was hyped. This was his territory. He had thrived in hell before, and he would dominate here too. But reality soon set in. Sonya confirmed that even he couldn't pierce the fog's veil. He only sensed the malice within it. Disappointment washed over her. Surely, he couldn't find the golden fish either. When he asked about the legend, she forced a smile. Another test, very well. She would explain. The myth. It was a leviathan that roamed these seas, carrying the continent of time upon its back. The realm of the two-winged sorcerers, a beast of unfathomable scale. A single speck on its hide rivaled a metropolis housing 1 million souls. Despite its size, it was a ghost. Only the chosen few ever witnessed it, ascending to legendary status without all exception. Ash remained unimpressed. He questioned the prize. Why hunt a monster that eclipsed the horizon? She told him. The answer was absolute power, instant evolution. When a silver wing hits their limit, the sea of knowledge offers nothing more. To advance, they must grasp the truth. They must summon a two-winged spirit to unlock the gate to the continent of time. Only there could they absorb the mana needed to condense their second wing. First silver, then gold. Gate of Truth demanded a personal creation as a key. Theft was impossible. One had to forge their own path. Unless one found the golden fish, it was the ultimate cheat code. A stowaway's ticket from the mortal realm to the divine. Sonya sighed internally. Why obsess over a miracle he could never locate? But suddenly, Ash's demeanor shifted. He didn't sense a monster. He sensed opportunity. The map before them bathed in a glorious golden light. Welcome to Adventure Island, a sanctuary devoid of trials or tribulations. Here, wild spirits did not fight. They frolicked in the open, oblivious to their fate. They were drooling, spoiled for choice. Sonya looked at Ash. What was he waiting for? It wasn't a hunt anymore. It was an all-you-can-eat buffet. They wasted no time. Chaos erupted as the spirits scattered in panic. From the frenzy, the two humans secured their prizes. First, a substitute spirit, a master of duplication capable of cloning a target. Second, a torrent spirit, a living cannon of kinetic hydroblasts. Ash stared at the substitute in his palm. Destiny had delivered. This was the specific spirit needed to exorcise the chip from his neck. Seeing his focus, Sonya stepped forward to claim the torrent, citing its high market value for her tuition. Ash merely shrugged, still viewing her as an NPC in his game. Money meant nothing to a virtual construct. With their spoils secured, their maiden voyage into the arcane drew to a close. As the dimension faded, the Sword Maiden's gaze lingered. Here, her mind was a fortress. But in reality, he would see everything. And that was exactly what she wanted. She had lied. The torrent was rare, yes, but the substitute spirit that was a treasure beyond price. A versatile masterpiece, superior to any specialized spirit by an entire tier. There was a reason she hid this truth. She had sensed his desire. He needed that spirit. So, she acted the part of the greedy merchant, claiming the torrent to ensure he took the greater prize without guilt. A calculated gamble. Once they returned to reality, he would read her memories. He would see her sacrifice. A small deception to prove her loyalty to the monster. Surely, that small gesture would warm his heart just a little. Sonya giggled in delight, pleased by the brilliant plan she had concocted. Returning to the field beneath the stars, she called out to the observer, but was met with silence. Absolute silence. Days dragged on as she searched for him, waiting for her scheme to bear fruit. However, he did not show his face at all. Rage erupted within her. That scoundrel had vanished with the prize after she baited the sugar-coated trap. Just as Sonya cursed the ghost who left her hanging, a cheerful voice broke her trance. "Good morning, it was Cecilia." Noting how excited Sonya looked after entering the arcane realm for the first time, Sonya returned the greeting of the senior she met through Felix. Beneath the surface, they were mirrors of each other, ruthless. Huntresses willing to sacrifice anything to climb the social ladder. After Sonya laid a trap for her boyfriend, this talented school junior arrived to lure him away. No wonder the hostility was thick in the air. To her shock, Cecilia recoiled after stepping close, covering her nose as if Sonya reeked of filth. Sonya's blood boiled. She knew she didn't smell annoyed. She fired a petty jab, but it was shallow and weak against the senior's arrogance. Cecilia flaunted. An inherited spirit, she had found a strange entity resembling a toddler clinging to a sheath. A magnificent find. One that boosts the user's strength exponentially when paired correctly. One could even evolve into an assassin swordsman with lethal arts forbidden to other factions. Despite its immense value, she was determined to gift it to her boyfriend. Seeing that smug expression, Sonya realized she must have looked exactly the same last night. Cecilia then struck a nerve, mentioning Sonya's impoverished family, claiming she would help them once she ascended. It was personal. She implied Sonya's bloodline was a shackle on her potential. The Sword Maiden's eyes darkened with murderous intent, but she forced a smile, swallowing the backhanded insult. The arrogant woman blinked, not expecting her to accept the offense so readily. But Sonya had a counterplay ready. Remarking that the senior's face was dirty, she raised her palm and unleashed a gentle stream of crystal-clear water. Cecilia froze in shock as the liquid washed over her, revealing the torrent spirit Sonya had claimed last night. The rookie laughed it off, claiming she luckily stumbled upon an adventure island, but the senior wasn't a fool. No first-timer simply stumbles upon that legendary zone, let alone finds the water faction's holy grail. Buying it was impossible. Transits were priceless, and almost never appeared on the market. In her mind, only one person could have granted such a gift. Summoned by the wave, the senior smiled, joining her junior. They walked to school, chatting like best friends. However, Sonya knew the truth. Cecilia was burning with jealousy, convinced Felix gave her the torrent secretly. Meanwhile, Ash woke at 8 in the morning, dreaming of a feast. Reality hit hard. The cafeteria was already swarming with prisoners who rose before dawn, sighing at the mounting troubles. He attempted to summon the first spirit he obtained, a foolish mistake. The chip sparked, agonizing electricity reminding him that magic was prohibited. He realized the cruel irony. The chip restricted the very magic he needed to bypass and destroy the chip itself. It was a perfect dead loop. Defeated. He waited in line with a glum expression, wondering where the sword maiden had gone. Finally reaching the front, premium seafood glistened before his eyes, but his order was cut short. A prisoner cut in, scooping 5 portions into a single bowl. The lady dumped everything onto his tray. Ash exploded, complaining about the beastmen hogging more rations than the humans. It was the unspoken rule, yet nobody dared question it but him. He opened his mouth to whine that nothing would be left, but his jaw clamped shut. The system intervened. The chip flagged that he was about to make a racially discriminatory statement strictly prohibited in prison. He wanted to curse, but the words died in his throat. His hands froze and trembled, locked by the inhibitor. He was furious, yet couldn't utter a sound. He tried to resist, but his body was a puppet to the law. Compared to this civilized and enforced peace, the Savage Deathmatch Club actually seemed adorable. Rushing to the arena, he spotted Lang. Noticing his boyfriend seemed smaller than usual, he slumped onto the bleachers, finding the violence much more comfortable. Suddenly, a familiar voice drifted over. Igor stepped from the shadows, assuring Ash he wouldn't challenge him to a death match. Yet, Ash knew better than to trust this tactical snake. As expected, the cunning man offered to trade the oldest form of human interaction. Just then, 2 flies began mating in the air. The timing couldn't have been worse. Igor, frustration boiling over, clarified that he was here to trade intel. He needed to know why. Why did the elf Vargas voluntarily challenge Ash to a duel? It was valuable info, but Ash hesitated, wondering if the succubus was spinning a web of lies. Igor demanded a guess, but Ash refused, sensing a trap. Annoyance finally won out. Igor decided to spill the secrets first, letting the boy judge the value for himself. If the intel was good, Ash would owe him an answer. The truth, Vargas was once a top researcher at Kimun, but despite rotting in prison for 5 years, he never faced the judgment ritual. Why? Purely because of his elven blood. The prison claimed racial equality was its cornerstone, but that was a lie. It was the first principle on paper, but in reality, some races held the keys while others wore the chains. To understand the challenge, they had to dig into the past, specifically the crime Vargas committed. What truly enraged the authorities wasn't violence, it was that he secretly raised a child. Ash, a stranger to this world, frowned in confusion. Why was that a crime? How are children raised if not by their parents? Igor scoffed at the naivety. In this nation, families don't exist. Socialized upbringing in state foster homes is the absolute law. The realization hit Ash like a physical blow. Everyone here was a child of the state. He opened his mouth to argue, trying to speak of orphans and parents, but his voice failed him. It wasn't the control chip silencing him. It was worse. The words father, mother, and parents simply didn't exist in this world's language. A dystopia where upbringing is socialized and chips control the mind? Ash took a breath, trying to process the nightmare. He pivoted back to the connection between Vargas and the child. The elf usually hoarded points in peace, avoiding conflict. Yet today, he stepped into the ring. The only variable powerful enough to move him was that child, and the shadow connecting them all was a man named Silent. Ash had heard the name, but the face remained a mystery. Igor poked his cheek, snapping him back to focus. Silent wasn't just a nobody, he was a history professor at the university, and the president of the Elven Association. He was hunting members of the Ancient Relic Research Society, the very group where Ash currently reigned as president. There was a bigger game being played here. The gears turned in Ash's mind. This professor, Silent, had to be the puppet master backing his rise among the 4 pillars. With the cards on the table, Igor demanded his payment. How did the rookie trick his inner voice? In the ring, Igor could hear the whispers of an enemy's soul, predicting every move before it happened. He read the surging emotions like an open book. Ash blinked. This was the first he'd heard of such a cheat ability. But to Igor, the real mystery was how Ash landed that punch. The boy's expression went blank. He shrugged, claiming that wanting to punch Igor and thinking he looked handsome weren't mutually exclusive. But Igor wasn't buying it. He should have sensed the intent to strike. Ash remained nonchalant. He simply smiled, admitting his mind had wandered. The punch flew the moment he snapped back to reality. It was a ridiculous explanation. A cult leader acting like a spaced-out amateur impossible. The succubus was losing patience. Even if his powers were limited, he had other ways. He reached out, touching Ash's face. He was a living lie detector, able to read deceit through the slightest shift in skin temperature. No matter what Ash said, his body would betray him. Calmly, Ash looked him in the eye and said, "I am lying right now." A perfect paradox. The statement short-circuited the human lie detector, leaving Igor glitching like a broken computer. Before he could recover, commotion erupted nearby. Voices were rising around the Elf Lord. A group of orcs approached Vargas, dripping with sarcasm, offering to serve the lowly elf. Vargas bowed, feigning gratitude, before launching a counterattack of pure, polite venom. The orcs roared in anger, but their mouths clamped shut instantly. The control chips detected hostility and sealed their lips. It was a masterclass in verbal warfare. Vargas danced around the sensors, using high-class insults that the system ignored. He triggered them one by one, gagging the entire group. Ash watched in awe as the elf dominated the room without lifting a finger, winning the war with a poisonous tongue. The prisoners were helpless. One orc let stupidity win and tried to kick him. The chip activated instantly, slamming the fool into the dirt. Dusting off his hands, Vargas looked up at Ash. "Shall we begin?" The time for talk was over. Moments later, they stood in the center of the arena, steel in hand. The atmosphere grew heavy. Ash scanned the bleachers, hoping to see the Sword Maiden, but the seats were empty of allies. He was truly alone. Igor's face pales with genuine terror as he issues a grim warning. He tells Ash that Vargas is a monster in a league of his own, an opponent who cannot be defeated by cheap tricks alone. Desperate advice rains down from the gallery, but the elf cuts through the noise with a sneer. He dismisses the onlookers as maggots, nothing more than annoying flies buzzing in his ear. He mocks their very existence. Even if these lowly worms managed to transform into butterflies, they would remain worthless filth rotting inside this cesspit of a prison. A silent apology passes through the elf's mind for what he must do. Then he moves. Ash gasps in shock as a blade tears through his shoulder in the blink of an eye. The speed is godlike. Ash struggles to track the movements, but instinct screams at him. To retreat is to die. He must close the distance if he wants to see tomorrow. Spotting a momentary gap, Ash swings his blade with desperate force, but it was a trap. Vargas spins his weapon with terrifying grace, blocking the strike effortlessly. Barely breaking a sweat, the elf looks down on him with cold disdain. "Have you learned nothing of the sword?" A brutal elbow smashes into Ash's face, sending him reeling. As Ash collapses toward the ground, death rushes to meet him. The tip of the blade descends purely on adrenaline. He manages to roll away just as the steel strikes. A deafening crack echoes through the arena as the weapon buries itself deep into the floor. It was a dull, unsharpened blade, yet it pierced solid stone like butter. This is the power of a spirit. Vargas reveals the truth of the sorcerer's path for a battle mage. Channeling such power during combat is as natural as breathing. True power cannot be caged. Even if one's hands and feet are bound against their will, the spirit remains free. If the body is tied, the soul must simply grow wings and soar. He unleashes the devastating slash. A massive wave of energy tears across the arena floor. Behold the elven sword miracle, the mountain-splitting earth slicer. The audience gasps in absolute disbelief. Magic spirits. Here it should be impossible to channel such energy within these anti-magic prison walls. But this is no simple spell. Using spirits is one thing, but a miracle is a symphony of power brought forth by the convergence of several spirits at once. Igor himself has never achieved a miracle in this hellhole. He watches with a sinking heart, certain that Ash is finished. There won't even be a corpse left to bury. The crowd prepares to look away in pity, but then they freeze. Amidst the dust and destruction, the young man is still standing, clinging stubbornly to life. Impossible. Even if the miracle's power was suppressed by the prison, no human should survive it. It was a blow meant to obliterate anyone barely holding a weapon. That strike should have instantly killed a novice who struggles to keep his blade steady. Yet Ash defies all logic. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. The look in Ash's eyes has completely changed. He stares forward with cold clarity. He can read the path of the sword now. That predatory gaze sends a violent shiver down Igor and Lang's spines. It is a look they recognize with dread, the terrifying aura of the Four Pillars cults.